There we go. Now we got it running. Sorry. Had to turn the mic back on. Hello, guys. Welcome to another beautiful episode of Tater-talks. It's another beautiful episode of Tater-talks where mental health and spirituality come into the balance of gaming. This is the show where we talk about mental health, mental needs, video gaming. We talk about talk about some good stuff in the video game world. Then we also talk about the essence of the need of, sometimes the need of spirituality needs. Maybe not everybody is a believer, so to speak, but everybody at least believes in something. Today is going to be more of a somber type of topic today. And I decided to kind of do this on my own. Mainly because I understand how difficult it is. It's not easy. Today's episode, we're going to be talking about pretty much recovery. It not necessarily has to be like a recovery from like drugs or anything. I mean, we can go down that route, but this is recovery as far as anything drastic, mainly recovering for the mind, body, and soul in itself. Mainly today, we're going to be diving into a topic that's close to home, literally. There was a major flood in my area here recently. I'm located here in East Tennessee, and it's definitely been very difficult the last couple of days. I want to say I'm very thankful that I myself, as well as the people I reside with, the house is okay. It wasn't washed away or anything like that. However, the 4 big bridges that we use to get into town or to get anywhere really was all destroyed. Farms were destroyed. So much is just gone. There are cities gone. There are people's houses gone. People gone. And it really got me thinking about how we can recover from such traumatic events, whether it not be just the flood itself, but mentally, spiritually, and physically. Now, I know many of you have many of you may have been through this type of experience before. Even other life-shaking events. And it can be hard to know where to start, honestly, with the healing and the rebuilding internally and externally. It's a lot. When you first look out into the distance and you see everything that's going on, just the look of everything kind of takes you back. You don't know where to begin. You don't know where to. You don't really know. I remember day one after everything finally settled. It was very quiet. It was very quiet here, as well as we had, I hopped in one of the vehicles that's on the property, and we went driving to see everything. And I think something that hit me the most was one of the farms. It's known as like Fender's Farm type deal. A lot of people went there during festivals, from for like mainly in the fall or mainly, for just harvest and whatnot. But that farm's gone. I think they said they still have one field that survived, but everything else is gone. Um, Also, there was seeing the bridges really affected me too. I went driving down to one of the bridges to kind of see what was going on, and um, that whole thing is gone. Um, I mean, you can definitely look at the videos. You can definitely look at the videos to see what's gone. While I'm kind of talking though, the main thing I want to point out is please feel free to share your experiences in the chat about how you've dealt with natural disasters or other big life changes. Let's work through this together. It's not easy. It's not easy. Now, for me, natural disasters are a kind of trauma that can affect us on so many levels. Like I said, personally, this flood hit hard, not just physically, but emotionally. Day one, I found myself a little bit overwhelmed and unsure where to begin as far as like, where do we get water? How are we going to get across the bridge? There's no hotels on this side of the river. And there's only like maybe 3 gas stations. And the fuel was, of course, was the first thing gone. Everybody and their brother went to the gas stations to fill up. And unfortunately, not everybody got a chance to fill up their gas. The second thing that kind of happened was we were trying to figure out how to get search and rescue going. Search and rescue going for the people that are kind of missing. There was, I want to say, day one, I arrived up to one of our resource points, and I got told we had 2 fire trucks with 4 men per truck, no ambulances, and maybe like 2, maybe 3 patrol vehicles on this side of the river. And they had no idea when, like I said, day one, we kind of didn't know anything. And so I went up there, and mainly what I do during the summer as a youth leader is we have to be medically trained and up to date on our knowledge. Not to necessarily deal with like big stuff, but we were able to handle like cuts, scrapes, pressurize a wound if it needs to be pressurized, stuff like that. And so I went up there and with my medical stuff that I had, and I offered, not essentially to be a first responder, but I offered to kind of help with the mitigation process, kind of a triage type deal. If you need a Band-Aid, I got you. If you need me to wrap a wound or something, I got you. But if it was anything major, then go ahead and try to get one of the firefighters. And what kind of took me back was, the first couple of hours we didn't really have too many people come in. People were coming in, trying, not necessarily for medical needs, but people were coming in as far as like, getting food or getting some water or anything like that. And it kind of took me back when a guy came in and he was completely speechless. He was completely speechless. You could tell that he had the entire wind just out of him. And I got the story from one of the people that brought him in, and I said, "Hey, what's going on?" And they said he said, I think they said, I feel like he's about to have a heart attack. He pretty much lost everything. He watched all of it go away. And that kind of didn't make me feel. That made me feel kind of a little bit nuts, a little bit, and I was like, okay. Long story short, he ended up having to be lifelined out of the school because there was no ambulances on this side of the river. We actually had to make a makeshift landing area for the helicopter to come in and pick him up. So, my first question to all of you is, how do you react emotionally in a time of crisis? What are some feelings that come up for you? Is it fear? Fear of the unknown? Maybe grief? I want to know kind of what emotions do you think you kind of experienced or you have experienced. I'll agree that I myself didn't feel kind of fear at first, but the uncertainty really was there. You kind of like on my last episode, you know how I told you I'm very bad for checklists. Yeah, about that. So I had checklists going in my head. How do we get water? How do we get water? How do we get, food? How do we just what's going on? And it was very tough. It was very tough at first. So I want to kind of talk about so I want to talk about coping strategies for the initial wave of emotions after a disaster. Have any of you used mindfulness breathing or breathing exercises or just playing games to escape for a bit when you felt overwhelmed? Maybe we play checkers, maybe we play chess, maybe, when the power's out, we don't have access to video games. Can't play World of Warcraft in that kind of time frame, no sir. So, I want to know kind of, how do you handle being calm when literally everything's hitting the fan? Um, for myself, definitely breathe, take it all in, let it go. I could tell you this is probably one of the first natural disasters I've ever been in. In the middle of, so to speak. And don't get me wrong, I was concerned. I've been in blizzards. I've been in situations where, they had to cut the water off for like a day. But like, not to this extent. I will say they said that this was historical. These were historical measurements that were going over dams and rivers and yeah, how high the water truly was going. For those of you who do play video games and whatnot, do you find it helpful in situations like these to focus on something immersive? I could just imagine it now. I could just imagine it now. Power's out, but we're running on a generator, and 5G hotspot to play World of Warcraft. Ah. We're on the brink, but we're here, man. I will say I found that creating a routine or even just a simple one can help bring some stability. You know, making sure water's in the house. Did you run by the center to make sure you had everything? Is everybody in the house good? You know, just a simple one. Did you wake up? Did you brush your teeth? I found so my question is what works for you when you're trying to ground yourself in chaotic times? That's what I want to know. After a flood, there's so much damage, physical damage to deal with. Sometimes it's very overwhelming. How do you balance the need to clean up, rebuild, and recover physically without burning out? Because that's kind of what I'm questioning right now. Is there? What I will say, the most beautiful thing is how fast the community, just the community alone, moved in on trying to help brothers and sisters. How fast that we got the resource center kind of up and running. That whole school is literally like Walmart 2.0. And they're not, and what I find is they're not stingy either. They literally, you walk in and they're like, what do you need? What do you is there anything you need? Do you need diapers? Do you need wipes? Do you need food? Do you need water? And they're the nicest people, dude. And so one thing I'm kind of concerned with is how long can we keep this going? But the one thing you need to focus, essentially, what I'm getting at though, is with the question, is you need to balance is the key. I feel like balance itself is the key. If you figure out a way to balance it, then everything will work out in the end. Yes, you need to rebuild. Yes, you need to clean up, but you also need to clean up and rebuild for yourself. You need to be able to have the proper guidance to be able to breathe. Take a step back. Don't make too hasty decisions so quickly. There's a lot. There's a lot that needs to get done. But over the course of time, it will all come back together. as they say, Rome was not built in a day. So I've learned that taking breaks and paying attention to your body during the physical stress is so important. If you start losing sleep because you're constantly worried about it, maybe you need to kind of take a step. If you've been working all day and you're aching a little bit, take a step. Yeah, there are some days where you feel like Mr. Man and you gotta keep it trucking. But don't forget, after you do all that, make a good break. Take a good break. So I want to know from everybody else, how do you stay physically strong and grounded in a time of crisis? That's essentially what I'm going to be asking is how do you stay grounded when there's nothing else? Even though there's always pressure to getting things back to normal quickly, remember that your body needs rest and nourishment. I've been making sure to stay hydrated and take things one step at a time. A human being can only last, I want to say it's 72 hours without water. So you want to make sure you're staying hydrated and clean as best as possible. Now, of course, in time of disasters, many of us turn to our faith or spiritual beliefs to find solace. For me, spirituality has definitely been a guide through tough times like this. How about you? I want to know, for me, when kind of things are, I'm not going to say it's 24/7 prayer, 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 but definitely when things are starting to get really real and it's starting to get out of control, yeah, I'm gonna start praying just a little bit. I'm gonna start. I'm gonna throw my name in the hat, as they say. Um, and then once everything's over, I do want to be thankful. I want to be thankful for being able to deal with what I can deal with. Now, personally, like I said, I find my strength in prayer and meditation. They've helped me find a peace in the chaos. And I'd love to hear how you guys connect with your own faith or spiritual practices in difficult times. What spiritual practices or traditions do you turn to when you're faced with loss and uncertainty? The kind of situation that can bring us closer to faith or even open us up to new forms of spirituality. Have you ever found that experiencing a crisis actually brought you closer to something greater than yourself? Once everything finally settled down and everything got back in order, you finally were able to just go, wow. Now, once everything resolves and you're back online and you're kind of everything's kind of going into the right direction, I've always felt that gaming communities can be a huge source of comfort, especially during hard times. In fact, connecting you with guys connecting with you guys through this podcast and on gaming streams has been one of the things that have kept me going. Not necessarily from just the flood itself, but from the passing of Sean and just everything that's bad that's been going on. The community I'm a part of has definitely been special. And as well as the comments and messages that I get personally from people watching the stream, watching these episodes, it really keeps me going. Right now, it may be just 1 or 3 messages, but going over the course of time, as it begins to grow, it turns into something beautiful. For some of us, gaming is a way to process and escape when things are too much in real life. So my question is, what games or gaming communities have helped you during tough times, if you're a part of one? And it necessarily doesn't have to be some actual community that's recognized, but like, I know for sure everybody has like 2 or 3 people that they play with constantly, whether it be on COD, whether it be on Stardew Valley, whether it be on Animal Crossing, whether it be on Pokemon. There's always like, as soon as you hop on, you go to your friends list to see such and such is online. Dude, we're about to play some Destiny and do some raids and all this other stuff. That's kind of your little community. I want to know what's your go-to game when you need to feel comforted or just to get your mind off things. I want to encourage anyone who's struggling to reach out to me, whether through it's through this podcast or a gaming community or somewhere else. There are always people who care and who want to help, and I want to help you. Whether it just be a conversation, whether it be a question that you have. Last night, dude, I didn't expect this. This kind of came up just to come as it did. Last night I had a conversation with a gentleman for like a good solid 3, almost 4 hours. I didn't even know that it passed that long. And it was awesome. I loved every bit of it. I'm more than willing to have conversations on people that agree or disagree with my viewpoints, as long as they're able to have that same kind of respect towards each other. And that's the one thing I have. I'm very tedious on. I would, if people want to see kind of, different opinions. That's one of the reasons I try to bring people onto this podcast, is so that way we can talk about it together. As I've always said, my way is not the highway. My way is not the only way. So that's why I try my best to make sure that I get some people that are happy to come up on here, and we can kind of disagree and we can kind of battle it out, at a respect factor. I'm not going to be bringing up people that say they can be respectful, in the end, they get belligerent. We can cut that off. That's not what this podcast is. This podcast is peaceful. And the conversation that I had with the guy was kind of about my personal beliefs, and how he didn't necessarily agree. But it wasn't necessarily he didn't disagree. He didn't agree with me. It was just he was wanting to know. And I loved every bit of it. Loved every bit of it. Because sometimes I do question my own self, and it kind of just brushes off the cobwebs, as I like to say. So, as always, like I said, I want to encourage anyone who's struggling to reach out to me. Let me know. Whether it's through the podcast or the gaming community or somewhere else, whether it be on my Discord, whether, you guys see all of my social media platforms up here. I promise you I'll answer you. Looking ahead, recovery doesn't happen overnight. Whether we're talking about a flood or an emotional setback, but just like in gaming, it's about taking it one level at a time, one challenge at a time. Whether it be through addiction, whether it be emotional help from like depression, whether it be natural disasters, whether it be not being able to cope with death. It's one level at a time, one challenge at a time. What's one thing that gives you hope or strength when you're trying to rebuild your life after a setback? I want to know. What as I said, what kind of keeps you grounded?